8 years into our loving relationship, my husband, Liam, married my sister, Audrey. It's just to give the child a legal status. It's only temporary. Temporary. I looked at the ever-increasing company dividends in my bank account. It wasn't so bad. A year later, he came to me, asking to get back together. I cradled my swollen belly and, with my new husband's arm around me, coldly refused. My child isn't illegitimate. We don't need a cheap substitute for a father. In that moment, Liam completely lost it. I had always thought Liam and I were in love. For 8 years, I had stood by him, from having nothing to being a successful man. Countless nights, he would whisper in my ear, his hand in mine, "Audrey, I'm so glad I have you." Everyone thought we would get married, until I saw his marriage certificate on his social media. The bride's name was not mine, but my half-sister's, Chloe. Audrey, having a child out of wedlock is a huge blow to a girl's reputation. Chloe is your sister. Are you just going to stand by and do nothing? He looked at me, his expression one of complete entitlement. I looked at this man, the boy I had loved for my entire youth, the boy I had stood by for my entire youth, and couldn't help but find it laughable. His only concern was her reputation. And what about me? Did he ever think that his marrying someone else would make me a laughingstock in everyone's eyes? He knew. Of course, he knew I was hurt, but he was so sure that I would, just as I had every time before, swallow my pride and support his every decision. "Audrey, it's just for a year." Perhaps seeing my silence, he took my hand, trying to warm my cold fingers, his voice softening. "You've always hated pain, haven't you? After she gives birth, we'll raise the child together. The 4 of us, we'll have a good life. That's all that matters." A sour taste filled my throat. I looked into his gentle eyes and, after a long moment, forced a smile. "Whatever you want. Live with however many people you want." I had met him when I was 18, at her birthday party. That day was also my birthday, but everyone was gathered around her in the brightly lit hall, singing and giving her presents. And I was in the courtyard, in a hand-me-down princess dress, holding a plate with a single bun, trying to light a candle. The candle was also her leftover, but I didn't care. Just as I was about to make a wish, I looked up and saw him. He wasn't inside, singing to her. He was standing in front of me, looking down at me with an amused expression. "If no one witnesses your wish, the spirits will get lazy." I didn't speak. I must have looked so stupid, so much so that I didn't even react when he stood beside me. It wasn't until he leaned in close to my ear and whispered, a teasing tone in his voice, "So, I'll be your witness. In return, will you share your cake with me?" Later, I had often wondered why I, who had always been so guarded, had fallen for him so easily. Perhaps it was because of that first meeting. That night, under the pale moonlight, he was breathtaking. Later, I had found out that he had been there that night to ask my father for an investment. Starting a business as a college student is always difficult, especially when your potential investor is a nouveau riche. I had secretly taken an interest in him and had started to casually bring up his field of study at the dinner table. When a competitor had appeared, I had deliberately angered my father, causing him to lash out. And in my sophomore year, I had even offered to be his assistant, for free. 247. For 8 years, I had been with him, from a 5-square-meter basement to the top floor of a skyscraper. I had watched him go from dejected to triumphant. At our lowest, the 2 of us had shared a single cup of instant noodles a day, and even the hot water was on credit from the local convenience store. At that time, he would always hold my hand, his eyes red, and say, "Audrey, believe in me. One day, I will never let you suffer with me again. One day." For 8 years, I had always believed that day would come, but now I realized that day was like a painted pie on the wall. It looked real, but it was forever out of reach. So, now, I couldn't eat that pie anymore. The day she moved into the villa, she had 4 32-inch suitcases, all packed to the brim. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but she refused to let anyone help her, just looked at me with a pitiful expression. "Sister, you know, I have a thing for cleanliness. I hate it when other people touch my things." She was 3 months pregnant, not yet showing, but as she spoke, she unconsciously rested her hand on her lower back and puffed out her stomach, a harmless smile on her face. "These are all the things he bought for the baby." I told him it was too soon. The baby is only 3 months old, but he wouldn't listen. But I can understand. It's his first time being a father. He wants to give him the world. "Oh, I almost forgot. You wouldn't understand." She covered her mouth with a look of apology, but her eyes were filled with an unconcealed triumph. I said nothing. Of course, I wouldn't understand. The year I was born was my father's most difficult year. He was so poor he couldn't afford to take my mother to the hospital, so she had to give birth to me in a drafty, rented room, with just a pot of boiling water and a pair of scissors, after a day and a night of agonizing pain. And then, on the third day of my life, she had run away. I, who had never had a drop of mother's milk, was immediately sent back to my father's hometown. Later, my father had made a fortune, remarried, and had a daughter. My sister had enjoyed the best of everything. She was born in the most expensive private hospital, had 3 nutritionists, and even her swaddling clothes were designer. And I was not brought back to my father's house until I was 10. It was the first time I had learned that you could take a shower every day, that your fingernails could be clean, that you wouldn't have to worry about rats crawling over you at night. My father loved her. Even when he went bankrupt, he had left her with enough money to go abroad. He loved her. They had only broken up because he was afraid of holding her back. And now, I came back to my senses and looked at the still, exquisite girl before me. I couldn't help but smile. It's okay. I don't want to understand. Her smile froze for a moment. As we stared at each other, the sound of footsteps came from behind me. Then, she put on a bright smile and went to greet him as he walked in. Honey, you're back. Her eyes were full of a gentle affection. As she approached, she took his briefcase from his hand, like a dutiful wife. Their movements were so in sync, so intimate. It made me feel even more out of place. You've worked hard today, Audrey. He looked at me, and as if sensing my cold mood, his voice was laced with a hint of a plea. I didn't answer, just looked at the briefcase in her hand. It was a gift I had given him when he had closed his first major deal. I suddenly felt that it was tainted. You have a thing for cleanliness. He's back now. It's just right. I spoke again, my gaze on her, who was clinging to his arm. I gestured with my chin at the 4 massive suitcases. He's not a stranger, is he? I smiled faintly. As expected, her face stiffened, and her eyes turned red. Then, she tugged at his sleeve and started to sob. Honey, am I causing you and your sister trouble? Of course not. He denied it quickly and shot me a look. Audrey, she's pregnant. She's emotional. You have to be more understanding. Understanding. I couldn't be any more understanding. If I hadn't slapped him, it would have been the greatest civility between us. I gave her a cold look and turned to go upstairs. I had only taken a few steps when I stopped and looked at him. Do you want me to move your things out of the master bedroom? Although we weren't married, everyone in the villa recognized me as the mistress of the house. But now that she had moved in, and with the status of a legal wife, everyone was at a loss, especially since the first day she had arrived. She had started to redecorate the villa, arrogantly changing all of my arrangements. Our housekeeper, Mrs. Gable, was indignant and had come upstairs to complain to me, but my reaction was mild. I had just told her to let her be. After all, I wouldn't be living here for much longer. I had already started to look for a place to move out, but before I did, there were still some things I needed to settle with him. Thinking of this, I started to feel sleepy. I don't know why, but lately, I had been feeling very tired. I rubbed my temples and, after comforting Mrs. Gable, I lay down on the bed and fell asleep. I had a very deep sleep. I dreamed of the day he had confessed his feelings to me. He had been drinking, his face red, but his eyes were clear. He was so nervous he didn't know what to do with his hands and feet, and his voice was trembling. He had asked me if I would be willing to be with him forever. He had said that he hoped that in their future life of 3 meals a day, 4 seasons a year, I would be by his side. He had said that once he had chosen someone, he would never change his mind. He had stammered, but even in my dream, I remembered it clearly. I had seen the me in my dream, for the first time, lose my composure, and had hugged him with tears in my eyes. And then, we had kissed passionately. In my dream, it was so sweet, but why? Why was the physical pain so real, so intense, like 1,000 needles pricking me? I opened my eyes and saw him sitting by my bed, looking at me. I was taken aback. After all, from the moment he had agreed to give her a title, we had had very little contact. He had not even stepped into the master bedroom. So, seeing him by my bed, my first reaction was to be on guard. I sat up, my gaze unfriendly. Are you here to get your things? A shadow crossed his face, but he quickly composed himself and reached for my hand, his voice soft and coaxing. Audrey, our relationship doesn't need a piece of paper to prove it. The words made me sick to my stomach. I pulled my hand away. Yes, and it doesn't need an explanation. I got out of bed and put some distance between us, but the next second, he hugged me from behind. The familiar scent enveloped me, but it made my skin crawl. I felt like I was going to be sick. And then, I really was. Wretch. I violently pushed him away. The moment I pushed him, I saw his face turn exceptionally ugly. He stared at me in disbelief and, through gritted teeth, said, "Are you disgusted by me? You should be with her. She's pregnant. She's emotional," I said, my face impassive. My explanation seemed to have calmed him down. He walked over and gently stroked my hair, his voice gentle. "I knew it. My Audrey is the kindest sister. She would still feel sorry for her sister. Audrey, you be good for a while. Later, I will make it up to you." My throat was tight, and my stomach was churning. The feeling of nausea was getting stronger. And then, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I pushed him away and ran to the bathroom, throwing up violently. His face was as dark as a thundercloud, but this time, before he could question me, I was the one who had composed myself. I wiped my mouth and looked up at him, deliberately asking, "Liam, with this reaction of mine, have you ever considered another possibility?" I stared at him, watching his expression. His first reaction was a panicked, "No way." In that moment, I suddenly felt a sense of release. Fine. My heart is dead. It will be easier to be ruthless later. With a small laugh, I moved my hand and, holding my thigh, slowly stood up. I walked up to him and, with a calm, breezy tone, smoothed a non-existent speck of dust from his shoulder. "Don't worry, if I were pregnant, I wouldn't need you to give me a legal status, Audrey." His voice was laced with an annoyance, but then, as if sensing the coldness in my face, a complex expression crossed his eyes. He looked at my stomach and, hesitating, "I know you're resentful, but I promise, I will make it up to you." "All right, how are you going to make it up to me?" I asked him. I proposed a compensation plan, 15% of the company's shares. He agreed, but before that, he still wanted me to go to the hospital for a check-up. He also hinted that if there were any accidents, he hoped I would consider the bigger picture. I smiled and nodded in agreement. To put his mind at ease, I very cooperatively went to the hospital's obstetrics and gynecology department, and, on the side, I met with someone. When I came out of the hospital, his car was parked by the side of the road, a string of 8s on the license plate, making a statement. Seeing me, he, for the first time, got out of the car. He stared at me, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Did you have an abortion?" I couldn't help but roll my eyes. I walked around him and got into the passenger seat, casually tossing the bag of medicine from the hospital onto the center console. He followed me in and, through the transparent plastic bag, saw the name of the medicine, drospirenone and ethinyl estradiol, birth control pills, hormonal imbalance. I glanced at him, and seeing his twitching eyelid, I explained, patiently, then turned to look ahead. "Aren't we going to find a place to talk?" I had sought him out for a reason. I had just gotten 15% of his company's shares, and I knew that he was very interested in his company. From the very beginning, he had been his most formidable rival, so, he was also my most advantageous choice. We met at a coffee shop. 15% of the shares. You want to sell them to me. My and his companies are rivals. What would I do with these shares? Am I so bored that I want to manage another company? Clearly, he had not expected me to be so direct. He looked at the documents I had handed him, and a rare look of astonishment crossed his usually playful face, but he quickly composed himself, rested his chin on his hand, and stared at my face, then smiled. "As a competitor, all I want is to crush the competition." My expression was composed. "No, I know you've always wanted to acquire our company." His expression changed. He narrowed his eyes, a dangerous glint in them, but my expression was still the same. "I can help you, but my condition is that after it's done, I get a 20% stake." The air was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "Do you know what you're doing?" He spoke, his voice no longer teasing. He put his arm down and crossed it over the other, his thumb unconsciously rubbing the silver ring on his index finger. His gaze never left me, and it was filled with a probing, evaluative look. I was unfazed, a polite smile still on my face. I'm backstabbing him. I admitted it freely, and I was looking forward to the day when I succeeded. Then, I saw him stand up. His tall frame brought a strong sense of pressure. He moved closer and closer, and in an instant, my sides were pinned by his arms. My heart skipped a beat. Besides him, in all these years, this was the first time I had been so close to a man, especially with him. His strong, different from his perfume, with its stimulating scent, it was impossible to ignore. Gradually, my breathing grew heavy, and my heart started to race. "All right." Suddenly, I heard him speak. I looked up, surprised, and met his deep gaze. I was surprised he had agreed so readily. and also surprised by the unreadable emotion in his eyes. But no matter what, the first step of my plan was a success. You can rest assured, I won't let you make a bad deal. I feigned a calm composure and, reaching over his arm, picked up my cup, raised it to him, and took a small sip. A subtle hint, we can now move on to the next step. I gestured with my chin at the other side, but he, as if he didn't understand my hint, remained in his position, which was well within my personal space. He even leaned in a little closer. My face was burning. I looked at his playful expression, a sense of helplessness, and even a feeling of being trapped, washing over me. He was not bad looking. His face was fair, a sign that he had never had to work a day in his life. He had sharp, handsome features, and his eyes were full of a confident energy. Unlike his reserved nature, his beauty was bold and intense, so he was even harder to resist. I unconsciously leaned back, my gaze fixed on him. Just as I was about to lose my patience, a cool breeze came, and the dark shadow in front of me suddenly moved away. All right, but I hope you can do one thing for me. As he spoke, he had already sat back down, and without even looking, he took out a pen and signed his name on the document I had given him. He pressed his 2 fingers on it and then handed it back, his gaze fixed on me, his eyes burning. I hope that after this is all over, you will be my personal assistant. I was stunned. I didn't consider myself to be exceptional, and with the reputation of a backstabber, I was already prepared to be blacklisted by the industry, and yet, he wanted me to be his personal assistant. I couldn't understand. I went back to the villa with a heavy heart, but the moment I walked in, I saw that my things had been thrown out, scattered all over the yard. My pupils contracted. I was stunned. Just then, the housekeeper ran over, her voice frantic. Mr. and Mrs. Miller are here. The moment they walked in, they told us to clear out your things. We couldn't stop them. The housekeeper was terrified. Seeing my silence, she was even more at a loss. I silently looked at the mess in the yard. Actually, when I had moved out of my parents' house, I had barely taken anything with me. Later, with him, from a few square meter rented room to this 100 square meter villa, little by little, I had finally accumulated my own belongings. For example, the wind chime on the ground, now broken into several pieces. It was the first thing I had bought for myself with my first part-time job. For example, the strawberry bear on the ground, now dirty. It was the one he had tried so hard to win for me on our first date. For example, the bottles on the ground, now shattered. They were the air bottles we had collected from every place we had visited. These were my real memories, after I had left my parents' house. But now, they were like trash. Lying here, I clenched my fists, my chest heaving, my vision started to turn red, and a buzzing sound filled my ears. Even the housekeeper's voice seemed to be getting farther and farther away. She came out, holding her stomach, and saw me standing in the ruins. My head bowed, a triumphant look was on her face. She even feigned a concerned tone as she walked towards me. Sister, are you okay? Mom and Dad said that it's not convenient for you to be living at their house now, so they had your things packed up and arranged another place for you. Smack. Before she could finish, I slapped her across the face. In that moment, I felt a sense of release from all the pent-up frustration, but I was kind. As I slapped her, I also grabbed her arm with my other hand, to keep her from falling. Everyone was stunned, including her. After all, from the very beginning, I had always been submissive. Even when she had moved into my house, I had not had any extreme reactions, had been as calm as a placid lake. But now, this placid lake was churning. Mrs. Gable, please clean up the things on the ground. I ignored her incredulous gaze and instructed the housekeeper. As I was speaking, my parents, who had finally heard the commotion, came out. They looked at me and her, confused, and then, she started to cry. Dad, Mom, she hit me. I was not surprised by her complaint. I watched as my biological father and stepmother rushed to her side, shielding her like a protective parent, and glared at me. My heart was strangely calm. You want me to leave, but you didn't even look at whose name is on the deed to this house. You throw out the owner's things without even asking. Chloe, do you want to apologize, or should I call the police? You choose. Before they could speak, I had already laid out my terms. One sentence, and her crying stopped. The faces of the man and woman behind her instantly turned green and white. The commotion had reached him. When he came back, she had started to cry again. Honey, she wants to kick me out. His face was not good, especially when he looked at me. There was a layer of disappointment in his eyes, and his first words to me were, Audrey, I thought you would be more sensible. Sensible. I let out a bitter laugh. This was the funniest joke I had ever heard. He was still able to so naturally see me as his possession. I shrugged and gestured with my chin at the mess in the yard. You're sensible. Take your wife and leave my villa. His face was even more strained. This villa, though he had paid for it, was in my name, because he had said that he wanted to give me an absolute sense of security, to make up for the years I had spent as a guest in someone else's house. It was true. The moment I had gotten the deed, I had been very moved. I didn't care how expensive the villa was. What I cared about was the him who had eyes only for me. At that time, his gaze was so clear, so sincere. He had held my hand tightly and had promised me he would give me everything he could, would make sure I never regretted being with him. The 25-year-old him, he had really loved me, and I had really loved him. But now, I looked at the man, who was still handsome, and who had even become more composed with age. I knew that we could never go back. Audrey, I know you're angry that she packed up your things without telling you. I'll replace them for you. For now, you can just stay at a hotel. He looked at the mess outside and then at my cold face. He must have felt that he was in the wrong. He came over and took my hand to comfort me. I dodged him. I didn't give him the chance. I went straight upstairs. I took the deed from the safe in the study and, walking up to her, opened it and said, "Here, my house. If anyone is leaving, it's you." She was so well protected by my father and stepmother. She had never been so provoked. Seeing me take out the evidence and so righteously kick her out, her eyes immediately turned red. Then, she clutched her stomach and started to cry out in pain. "Chloe, she's your sister. Do you have to be so petty?" My father started to feel sorry for her. "Audrey, she's pregnant. For the sake of the times your aunt was good to you at home, can't you just let her be? A pregnant woman can't be stressed." My stepmother started to play the victim. "Audrey, can't you just stop it?" He started to get impatient, but I just closed the deed with a cold face and pointed at her. "So, if you don't want to be kicked out, then apologize to me." Her face turned even paler. She bit her lip and looked at me with a resentful gaze. "You don't want to? Fine." I didn't care. I was about to call security. Then, I heard her voice. "I'm sorry." "Okay, I didn't know." This one apology. It was filled with a great deal of grievance. Even my father and him looked at me with disappointment. My father even cursed at me for being cold-blooded, for not caring about our sisterly bond. I smiled and said, coolly, "If you feel so sorry for your little daughter, you can take her home with you." My father was instantly silenced. A few years ago, he had gone bankrupt. His 500-square-meter villa had also been auctioned off. Now he and my stepmother were living in a one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. There was no room for her. Just then, Mrs. Gable had finished packing and was about to have my things moved back into the house. "No need," I stopped her. "I don't want any of it. He has to pay for it." Mrs. Gable's steps faltered. She looked down at the mess, her voice filled with pity. "Miss, but some of these are your treasures. You wouldn't even let me touch them when I was cleaning." I waved my hand and stopped her from continuing. "It's okay. Out with the old, in with the new." My sincere words. His face darkened even more. I knew my words had stung him, but so what? It had nothing to do with me. He took a call and hurried off. She, having been rebuffed by me, was quiet for the rest of the night, but only for one night. In the middle of the night, the villa was suddenly filled with lights. Mrs. Gable ran upstairs and pounded on my door. "Miss, she's having stomach pains." I immediately called for an ambulance. Soon, the ambulance arrived and took her to the hospital. I didn't go with them. Instead, I sent him a text. For the next few days, he didn't come back. I wasn't surprised, but Mrs. Gable was constantly muttering in my ear, complaining on my behalf. She said that she was just a usurper, that for a sister to steal her sister's fiancé. In the old days, she would have been stoned to death. I sneered. But now, everyone online is saying their love is stronger than gold. This was not a fabrication. The day after she was hospitalized, the news had already spread. Tech mogul Liam and new wife pregnant. Tech mogul Liam dotes on wife. The most handsome mogul and the most beautiful pregnant wife. The headlines were catchy, and the articles, they were even more so. The content detailed their pure, childhood love. When they were young, he was her childhood sweetheart. Because of a change in his family's fortunes, he had gone bankrupt, but to be worthy of the girl he loved, he had worked hard to start his own business and had finally become successful, marrying his beloved wife. A happy ending, so beautiful, And it was even accompanied by a picture of him sitting by her hospital bed, carefully peeling an orange for her. His gaze was gentle, her eyes full of affection. Just looking at the picture, it was enough to make you imagine. I emotionlessly exited the page. Then, my phone chimed. How's the content? If you're angry right now, please stay that way. Anger can keep a person clear-headed. A message from him. His words. They were as annoying as the man himself. He had even included a cheesy emoji. I found it amusing. I tapped on the keyboard and replied. A clear-headed person. What do they usually do? The other end was probably thinking, because I saw that the chat was constantly showing typing. Then, a message popped up. 2 concise words. Ruin him. I raised an eyebrow, my finger hovering over the chat box. I looked at the 2 words and slowly smiled. He and she had benefited from the internet. In just a few days, the hype had grown very quickly. The whole internet was sending them their blessings. Even the company's orders had increased. But not long after, the tide had turned. It started with a recording that had been leaked from inside the company. What? Stronger than gold. The president's girlfriend is his assistant. She's been with him since the very beginning. And now that he's successful, his wife has been replaced. The assistant and our president have been in love for 8 years. The president's villa is in her name. We all thought they would get married. We don't dare to say anything in public, but behind their backs, we all feel so sorry for the assistant. Such a good girl. The recording was posted online, and a heated discussion began. Some said the recording was fake. Others said that where there's smoke, there's fire. They even started to dig up information on this assistant. And as it turns out, this assistant did exist, and she had indeed been with him from the very beginning, but their relationship was a mystery, especially since someone had dug up that this assistant was also living in his villa. This kind of moral gossip, it wasn't illegal, but it was a fatal blow to his company. In the internet age, even a small ripple can affect a company's operations, and he, with his guilty conscience, had been trying to get ahead of the story. So, before the hype could reach its peak, he had come to see me. Audrey, the company is our life's work. I trust you won't just stand by and watch it go down in flames. He held my hand, his tone certain. I'm on vacation. I emotionlessly pulled my hand away, my tone devoid of any emotion. This was his decision. The day after she had moved into the villa, he had suspended my work, saying it was to give me a break, and also to reduce the gossip. He had said it was to protect me, to avoid me being pointed at the company. But now, he had come to me, hoping I would stand up for the company. What do you want me to do? I didn't play hard to get. Seeing his stiff face, I asked calmly. As expected, his face relaxed, and he smiled gently. Audrey, I know you're the most considerate. He was still so sure that I was still in love with him. After all, from the moment she had moved into the villa until now, my attitude had been distant, but I had never mentioned cutting ties, nor had I moved out of the villa. He was confident. He was confident that I would always wait for him. I looked at his relieved expression and suddenly felt that it was ridiculously funny. My mind unconsciously flashed to a picture of a woman digging for wild vegetables. What? Did he also think that I, after 8 years of love, would also be willing to dig for wild vegetables? Audrey, actually, this matter. All you have to do is to come forward and say a few words, to clarify that we've only ever been colleagues, and that you're only living at the villa to be close to your sister. Audrey, netizens are just looking for a new thrill. Once the hype dies down, who's going to hold on to this? He was so certain. I listened, silent, perhaps because my gaze was too peaceful. He was a little flustered. Just as he was about to say more, I smiled and agreed. Okay, I'll do it. My cooperation made her think I had given in. The moment she came back, she was arrogant and fearless. At dinner, she sat at the table, holding her stomach, and was picky about all the dishes Mrs. Gable had made. Mrs. Gable, is this even edible? I'm in a special condition right now. If you don't know who you're supposed to be taking care of, then you can just leave. She was so arrogant, and she glanced at me, her eyes full of triumph. I sat at the other end of the table, watching her pretentious act, and it made me lose my appetite. But unfortunately, she had ruined Mrs. Gable's delicious meal. I lowered my head and served myself some soup, trying to ignore her, but she was like a flea, constantly jumping in front of me. This is so sweet. Don't you know that a pregnant woman can't eat sweet things? If I get gestational diabetes, Mrs. Gable, is it you who's trying to harm me? Or is there someone behind you, trying to harm me? What are you up to? She threw a tantrum and threw her food. Mrs. Gable, who had been holding her tongue all night, finally couldn't take it anymore. she retorted, holding back her anger. Miss, we've always cooked according to the old tastes. We've never had any problems. How come the moment you arrive, everything is wrong? If you're not satisfied, you can hire your own cook to cook for you. Her words made her face turn several shades of green. She was frozen in place, her gaze shifting from Mrs. Gable to me, who was calmly sipping my soup. Then, she suddenly clutched her stomach and started to cry out in pain. My hand, holding the spoon, froze, but before I could speak, I heard a flurry of footsteps from the doorway. Then, he, like a knight in shining armor, was shielding her. A perfect match. I suddenly felt that the soup in my bowl was tasteless. I put down my spoon and just watched them, though I didn't speak. The distance and coldness in my eyes made him, who was about to lecture me, fall silent. Honey, I should just not stay here. This is all her people. The villa is in her name. I'm just a guest here. Everything is so unfamiliar. She held his arm, her eyes full of grievance. Mrs. Gable, hearing this, couldn't hold her tongue. Miss, even though you are a guest, we have never neglected you. Mrs. Gable, he snapped at her, so fiercely that she was instantly at a loss. Then, he turned his gaze to me, his eyes filled with a certain conflict. I watched, finding it amusing. What was he trying to do? Was he still going to hesitate? Or was he, before he did something, deliberately showing such an emotion to make himself seem less of a scumbag? I looked at him calmly, at his as if he were in a battle with himself. He let go of her and slowly walked up to me. He took a document from his briefcase and placed it in front of me. I looked down, following his hand to the document. With just a glance, I knew what he was trying to do. Audrey, I've thought about it. You should move out, and this villa, it should be temporarily transferred back to me. We'll talk about it after the hype has died down. He was consulting me, but though he said he was consulting, the documents were all ready, just waiting for my signature. I looked down at the black and white text, then looked up and met his gentle, affectionate eyes. He had even thoughtfully prepared a pen for me. I nodded, a smile on my face. In his relieved expression, I reached out and pushed the documents away, my voice cool and flat. Since it's a transfer, then let's have a clear price, cash on delivery. In an instant, I saw his face stiffen. He must have not expected me to be so direct, but before he could speak again, I looked up and added, I want cash. Then, I saw her face also stiffen. He agreed. He contacted his lawyer and his assistant and had them bring me bags and bags of cash. In the process, her face was a mixture of green and white, until the last bag of cash was put into the back of my car by the people I had arranged. She couldn't help but sneer. I thought you were so devoted to him all these years. One sentence, and his face in the night darkened even more. From the beginning, from the shares to today's cash, he could vaguely feel that something was wrong. It was as if I were slowly cutting ties with him. If the last time, when she had thrown my things out of the yard, and I had used the villa's ownership to get my way, was just a tantrum, then now, he had bought back the villa with real money. It was really a cash on delivery. Audrey, I was just trying to put on a show. You don't trust me. He couldn't help but come over and take my hand, his voice low. As he spoke, he glanced at her, then turned back to me, his eyes filled with a deep, probing look, and a hidden fire. But in the moonlight, my expression was serene. He couldn't quite see it. It's all a show. Do you trust me? I retorted. Sure enough, magic defeats magic. At my question, he was speechless. He let go of my hand and forced a smile. Audrey, if I didn't trust you, I wouldn't have given you the shares and the cash. I'm doing all this to give you a sense of security. His tone was gentle. Yes, I now have a great sense of security. My reply was certain. I patted the roof of the car and, meeting his gaze, gave him the first genuine smile of the night. After all, to see if a man loves you, you don't look at what he says, but at what he does. I didn't deliberately lower my voice, so she could hear everything. I did it on purpose. Seeing her suddenly pale face, a mischievous glint flashed in my eyes. I reached out and patted his cheek, a smile on my face. So, don't worry, I also know what to do. My words seemed to have reassured him. Seeing the surprise in his eyes, my smile deepened. I pulled my hand back and called out, Mrs. Gable, Mrs. Gable, since she is not satisfied with your care, you can come with me. Mrs. Gable, all right. Mrs. Gable had been holding in a lot of anger. Hearing me say this, she didn't even want to pack her bags. She rushed to the car and, as she got in, she deliberately stuck her neck out and gave her a haughty look. And with Mrs. Gable's move, many others in the yard were also eager to follow. Bodyguard, miss, Are you buying another house and hiring? Maid, miss, when it comes to hiring, it's better to hire someone you know. I think I'm a good fit. Driver, miss, why don't I just take you all the way? After I drop you off, I won't come back. I'm sure Mr. Hayes won't mind losing one more car. Him. So, I left the villa, and I took the driver, the maid, the bodyguard, and Mrs. Gable with me, and he had not expected that when I had decided to leave, I had already asked him to buy a villa nearby, and when I arrived with my team, I saw his tall figure waiting at the door. Mrs. Gable, miss, you eat well. I couldn't help but laugh. I got out of the car and instructed the others to put my few belongings inside. I walked up to him. You have a good nose, don't you? I teased. He was still in that lazy posture, a smile on his face. He looked at the procession behind me and raised an eyebrow. I heard you were moving in tonight. I thought you would need help, but when I came over, I was too shallow. With that, he even feigned a melancholy expression and pinched the bridge of his nose. I was amused and thanked him again. Without you, I and all these people would have been homeless tonight. I was being sincere, though I had planned on leaving. Tonight's events had been a sudden decision, so, it was thanks to his quick action. I looked at the man's handsome but not at all gentle features, and my gaze softened. I sincerely thanked him. Nathan, even though we're partners, thank you for your help during this time. My words made the man, who had been smiling playfully, look unusually unnatural. His body even stiffened. The moonlight on his face made him look even more profound. He looked at me, his eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't understand. Don't thank me, I heard him say, his voice hoarse, yet so alluring it made my mouth go dry. My cheeks also started to burn. I subconsciously avoided his gaze and forced a smile. It's too late today. After this is all over, I'll invite you to a housewarming party. I was being polite and courteous. He was a smart man. He knew I was trying to get rid of him. He looked at me, and because of his height, he completely enveloped me in his shadow. My heart started to beat faster. He and him were different, perhaps because of their different upbringings. He, after years in the business world, was reserved and restrained. Sometimes, he even had a hint of gloom about him. But him, perhaps because his life had always been smooth, he was always full of a confident energy, strong and outward, direct and dazzling. I was not an inexperienced girl. I could vaguely sense his feelings for me, but I didn't want to think about it. Whether it was because I was scared, or tired, but for now, I really didn't want to touch another relationship. I still had a polite smile on my face, and my gaze towards him was calm but distant. Finally, his expression changed slightly. He lowered his eyes, as if in annoyance, or perhaps in grievance. He strode past me and muttered, so ungrateful, use me and then throw me away. The gentle breeze on my face, my heartstrings were plucked. I pretended not to hear him. Soon, his car had disappeared into the night. I was still standing at the door. Mrs. Gable came over and asked, Miss, this gentleman, is he a new friend of yours? I looked at Mrs. Gable. Her face was practically screaming. Gossip. She was so excited, and also, relieved. I laughed, and my gaze shifted to the night sky. I said calmly, my new boss. He invited the city's most well-known media and held a press conference. It was very grand, very formal. That day, I, as the other party involved, was invited to attend. The moment I appeared before the media, countless reporters swarmed around me, all trying to ask me about my relationship with him. Though there were bodyguards to maintain order, there was still a brief period of chaos. Everyone, I've invited you all here today to clear up the recent rumors. All your questions, the assistant and I will answer them one by one. In the chaos, I heard his voice. He was in a suit today, shielding her as they sat down. He was the picture of a gentle, doting husband, facing the reporters. His attitude was also very friendly. Everyone, please give the assistant some space. With him in control, the reporters temporarily backed away, giving me a path. I continued to walk forward. I saw that on the stage, besides her and him, even my biological father and stepmother were there. A self-deprecating smile touched my lips, seeing them sitting there so properly. A happy family of four. The empty seat looked very out of place. An out-of-place seat. An out-of-place me, just like when I was still living at their house. At the dinner table, her family of three always had a matching set of tableware, only I had a separate set, as if I were a guest in this house, living under someone else's roof. Later, when I had moved out of their house and was with him, I had bought many matching sets of tableware and had put them in the kitchen cabinet. He had even teased me, asking if I had OCD. Otherwise, why did the tableware on the table always have to be of the same color? I had never explained. Perhaps, deep down, I just craved the warmth of a family. But what a pity, when I came back to my senses, I was already sitting in my seat. Without wasting any time, he took out the prepared opening statement and, in front of the media, explained his relationship with my family, with her, and with him. In his words, their two families were close friends. When his family was in trouble, my father had generously helped him. When he was starting his own business, he had even arranged for me to work at his company to learn. The assistant and the president are of a similar age, both handsome and beautiful. They've been in and out of the company together all these years. Has nothing ever happened between them? A reporter raised an objection. Their gaze towards me and him was not at all innocent. After all these years, to keep a low profile, we had never publicly acknowledged our relationship, but we had not deliberately hidden it either. Mr. Hayes, everyone at the company says the assistant is the boss's wife. Yes, from the very beginning, the assistant has been by your side. Is it really just a colleague relationship? Compared to the assistant who has been with you day and night, her sister has been abroad for several years. This time she's back, and you two got married in a flash. The reporter's questions were getting sharper and sharper. Gradually, his face darkened, and he kept looking at me. I lowered my eyes, knowing that he had lost control of the situation. After all these years, at every major meeting, I had been the one to assist him, and this time, I cleared my throat and slowly spoke. Everyone, regarding my relationship with Mr. Hayes, I'd like to take this opportunity to clarify. He and I, we're naturally not just colleagues. At my words, a collective gasp went through the crowd. I didn't even have to look to feel the sharp gazes from the side, but I didn't care. I stood up slowly and, facing the countless flashing lights, continued, Mr. Hayes is also my brother-in-law. The direction of the conversation had taken a strange turn. No one had expected me to say such a thing. After a few seconds of stunned silence, someone muttered, "Isn't that obvious? He married her sister." At this, the discussion grew louder. She's his sister-in-law now. What about before? They've been together day and night for so many years. I don't believe there's nothing between them. Maybe he's having his cake and eating it too. Didn't her family go bankrupt? So he's keeping the sister in the living room and the other one in the bedroom. He was listening, and his face was getting more and more strained. If it weren't for the public setting, he would have probably rushed over and yelled at me for wasting time, for saying such pointless things. But now, he had to be patient, to suppress his anger and explain. The assistant's hard work at the company all these years. I've seen it all. Now that we're a family, we should help each other even more. As for those rumors, I hope everyone will be rational. He spoke so righteously. I felt sick to my stomach, but I smiled. At this point, my father also stood up and, after a brief control of the situation, said in a deep voice, "I've always believed in this boy's character. That's why I put my eldest daughter by his side to learn all those years ago. As for matters of the heart, I can only say that this boy, he's a devoted and affectionate person. He and his wife were childhood sweethearts. They were separated for a few years. Their love is very sincere." I clenched the corner of my dress, and hearing my father's defense, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So my father also had a paternal side, just not for me. His defense, it was only for her. My throat was a little dry. I silently listened as he and my father sang a duet, their words all excluding me. But at that moment, a sneer came from the crowd, "Devoted and affectionate, but I have here pictures of him and the assistant together, and according to his university teachers and classmates, she was his girlfriend." I saw a reporter take out a stack of photos and pass them around. Then, everyone's expressions changed again. They looked at him as if he were a scumbag. A female reporter even went up to him, threw the pictures on the table, and demanded, her face dark, "Mr. Hayes, from these pictures, do you still think you and the assistant are just colleagues?" In the picture, I was helping a drunk him leave, our bodies close, his arm intimately around my waist. Under the lights, it was very ambiguous. His face was not good. Or is it that you're just using the colleague excuse to be with both sisters, to time them? The female reporter was relentless. The room was silent. The trouble had been thrown at his feet, and the faces of my family were not good either. A reporter even asked me, "Miss, you have never clarified your past relationship with him, so were you two ever together?" It was a direct question. I sat in my seat and, facing the reporter's siege, their probing gazes, my heart was strangely calm. I moved my lips, then, I denied it. "Probably not. That, probably, It was very subtle. Everyone's expressions became very meaningful. Soon, someone followed up. Not together, but his villa is registered in the assistant's name. The reporter was talking about the villa I had just transferred. Hearing this, he was suddenly emboldened and retorted, "Nonsense." She also immediately interjected, "My sister is just temporarily staying at his villa." I also believe him. His heart has always been only with me. I looked at the adoring look in her eyes as she looked at him, and I frowned. I had heard something was wrong, let alone the reporters. "Miss, you mean you believe he is completely devoted to you? But, Miss Audrey, your feelings for him are different." Sure enough, as I had expected, she was deliberately misleading the reporters. And after the reporter's question, she even pretended to be at a loss, covered her mouth, and shot me a guilty look. "Sister, I didn't mean to." I watched her performance with a cold indifference. Perhaps because the coldness in my eyes was too strong, she couldn't help but flinch. Her eyes reddened, and soon they were filled with tears. "But sister, at this time, if you don't stand up and clarify, he will be misunderstood." I have to admit, I could never do what she did, in front of the cameras, to cry so pitifully, her pale face like a willow in the wind, so fragile. Her words, they were even more convincing. Everyone's gaze on me became more probing, but there were still people who raised objections, who thought she was just putting on an act, especially that female reporter. She sneered and presented more evidence. I heard his legal team just completed a property transfer. "From the looks of it, you're the one who's just temporarily staying, right? And you're only 3 months pregnant. You got married a month ago. It's hard not to suspect that you're a mistress who used your belly to get ahead. And what's more, from the very beginning of his business until now, the one who has been by his side is the assistant. And you just came back this year, and not long after, you became his legal wife." She was so choked with anger her face was red. I couldn't help but give the sharp-witted woman in the crowd a thumbs up. If the situation wasn't so inappropriate, I would have even applauded her. She was literally my spokesperson. It was as if with her here, I didn't even have to be here today. And as everyone was pointing fingers at her and him, she, as if she couldn't take it anymore, clutched her heart, took a few deep breaths, and then, with a look of determination, took a notebook from under her. This is her diary. It describes how she's been secretly in love with him since she was 18. All these years, it's always been one-sided. When I saw the diary, I was a little dazed. The diary in her hand was cheap looking, old and worn. The tulip on the cover faded, but I still recognized it. This notebook, it was indeed mine. March 22nd. Sunny, I know his name is Liam. I know every letter of his name, but every time he comes, it seems to be to ask my father for help. If I could help him, would he remember me more? April 8th. Cloudy, I helped him get rid of a competitor. My father yelled at me. So, next time he comes, can I ask him to talk to me for a little longer? May 21st. Sunny, he brought me a gift, an air bottle from Sri Lanka. It's very interesting, more interesting than the diamond necklace he brought for my sister. I love it. She was still reading. In front of everyone, she was tearing open the most secret of my youth. I was completely numb. My head was buzzing. The noise of the crowd faded away. A nameless fire surged in my heart. I couldn't control my actions. When I came to my senses, I had already rushed up to her. With one hand, I snatched the diary from her, and with the other, I slapped her hard across her hateful face. "Chloe, you stole my diary." Even he had thought that I had fallen for him over time. I had never revealed my secret crush. All my girlish feelings had been buried in my heart with the missing diary. But now, all my most sincere feelings had been exposed. Under his betrayal, it seemed even more like a joke. My hand was trembling uncontrollably, and before I could pull myself together, my shoulder ached, and I was pushed away. "Audrey, are you crazy? Your sister is pregnant. You're so angry you're hitting people." My father glared at me, shielding her protectively, and raised his hand to discipline me. "She stole my diary." "But at the time, what did you say?" I asked him with a cold face. In an instant, I saw the unease on my father's face. It was true. This incident was the reason I had moved out of their house, though we lived under the same roof. My room was never locked. According to my stepmother, if my room was locked, the maids couldn't clean it, even though her room had long since been fitted with the most advanced fingerprint lock. As a teenager, I had still hoped for fair treatment, so I had gathered the courage to ask my father for a lock, but he had just said, "What do you have in your room that's so valuable? You're so dramatic." Not long after, my diary had disappeared. I had searched the entire house but couldn't find it. I suspected someone had stolen it. I had hoped my father would check the surveillance. I had cried for the first time. The diary. It wasn't valuable to them, but it held all my girlish secrets, those unspeakable, hidden feelings. They were priceless to me, but no matter how much I cried, how much I begged, my father was just impatient, especially when I said my diary had been stolen. He had slapped me across the face and had yelled at me, "Who in this house is a thief? You're the one who looks most like a thief. The thief is crying, thief." In the end, with a red, swollen face, I had taken a few books and a few clothes and had left their house without looking back. So, he had always known the truth. He was just protecting his precious little daughter. Even now, it was still the same. "What steal? You didn't put it away properly." She just picked it up. "I haven't even yelled at you yet. A young girl, instead of studying, you're always thinking about how to seduce men. You shameless thing." He was pointing at me, cursing, and my stepmother was adding fuel to the fire. "Audrey, she knows you like him. That's why she went abroad all those years. She was trying to create an opportunity for you, but you can't force feelings. You've been by his side for so many years, but his heart belongs to someone else. There's nothing you can do." As she spoke, the cameras immediately turned from me and my family to him. In front of the cameras, his expression was dark and unreadable. Even a reporter who was not afraid of causing trouble asked, "Mr. Hayes, so all these years, the assistant has just been one-sidedly pursuing you?" The reporters were looking at him. He was looking at me. I saw conflict in his face, restraint, and a fleeting guilt and remorse. It was rare for him to feel guilty. Was it because he had heard the heartfelt emotions in my diary? So in this moment, he regretted pushing me into the spotlight, to be a ridiculous fig leaf for him and her. I clenched my knuckles and suppressed the churning emotions. Just as I was about to ruthlessly tear off their dirty, tattered cloth, suddenly, a conversation sounded from mid-air. "Liam, what are you thinking? You were about to marry Audrey, and then you turned around and married her sister. Do you have any consideration for her? You don't understand. She was violated because of me. Her body is special. She can't have an abortion, with a child of an unknown father. What will she do in the future? But what about Audrey? She was with you from having nothing to now. You're sacrificing her for your sense of responsibility. Is that fair? We've been together for 8 years. She'll understand me, just as she has always supported my every decision. But, between us, we don't need that piece of paper. But she's different. She's fragile and can't take care of herself." The room was silent. He was like he had been struck by lightning, staring, his body rigid, like a cold, frozen statue. This recording, you could clearly hear his voice. The other one was his best friend. I was taken aback. After all, this recording, it was much more effective than anything I could say. It had completely nailed him to the wall. "Fake. This is all fake. Sister, where did you get this fake recording? You're so cruel. You're trying to ruin him." She was the first to break down, rushing at me like a madwoman. And the moment she rushed at me, I had already quickly stepped back. Then, the large screen unexpectedly lit up again, seamlessly transitioning to another video. The press conference was being held in a 5-star hotel's conference room. The LCD screen took up the entire front wall. The moment the content was displayed, it was accompanied by an unbearable sound. "Honey, I came back this time to have your son. You can't let me down." In the video, she, in a sheer nightgown, was straddling a fat, middle-aged man, her luscious lips disgustingly landing on his fleshy face, kissing all the way down, making him pant with excitement. "You little vixen, don't worry. As soon as I've transferred all of that tigress's assets, I'll bring you back. You'll just have to be patient for a little while. But that tigress, she's very smart. Don't worry, I've already found a backup. When the time comes, I'll find a way to get a marriage license. Your son will be born legitimate." The conversation was cut off, and a passionate symphony began. So exciting, more dramatic than a soap opera. Even I was stunned, looking at her. She had stolen my fiancé. But now, seeing the truth, I actually felt a little pity for him. I looked at him. His face was paler than a ghost. His gaze went from the screen to her. A grown man. He was on the verge of tears. His chest was heaving up and down. He finally opened his mouth, but not a single sound came out. My father's expression was also very ugly. My stepmother was even more guilty, blocking the large screen, yelling, "Don't look, don't film." Then, the scene descended into a complete, uncontrollable chaos. To my surprise, her fragile body had not had a miscarriage, but the press conference had become the #1 trending topic. Liam abandons fiancé of 8 years to be a stepfather to a tycoon's mistress, losing money, fame, and his mind. To Liam's, fragile and helpless, white moonlight, even a beggar has more pride. A joke, Liam. His name was now a hot topic, his company, it was finished. Interestingly, in this round of online shaming, I was lucky enough to escape unscathed. There was not a single discussion about me online, no praise, no criticism. She was hiding in the hospital, not seeing anyone, but she couldn't hide from the media, nor could she hide from the tycoon's wife, who had heard the news from abroad. One day, she and her baby disappeared from the hospital. My father and mother were going crazy, looking for her, but my father was no longer a rich man. He had no resources, no connections, and he didn't dare to call the police. In the end, he had to beg him, but now, he hated her to the core. Not only was he dealing with his own mess, but even if he had a way, he would never help, so the result was that they had exhausted all means to contact me. The moment I received my father's call, my mentality was very good. I even gave him some advice. Call the police. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Audrey, I know I've wronged you all these years, but just this once, I'm begging you, can you find a way to help me find your sister? His voice was unprecedentedly humble. Even that one apology, it sounded sincere to my ears. When I find your sister, I'll make her kneel before you and kowtow to you, he said, with such certainty, but I was unmoved. I had long passed the age where a single apology could heal all wounds. I lowered my eyes and nonchalantly traced the pattern on the porcelain plate before me. No need, I've already let it go. Not forgiveness, not letting go, just not caring anymore. But, as a moral reminder, who she really offended, you know in your heart. With that, without waiting for a reply, I hung up and looked up at him, who was sitting across from me, his expression teasing, and continued our previous topic. Mr. Thorne, let's continue our discussion on my new company's compensation package. Just today, he had acquired all of his company's shares and had successfully taken over. The ridiculous thing was that he, until the moment he was kicked out of the board, had believed that the 15% of the shares he had given me was his final trump card. How would you like to discuss it, Miss Miller? He retorted. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but our positions were the same as the last time I had come to him for a partnership. Even his face had that same lazy, teasing expression. His last word was drawn out, and his long, fair fingers were playing with a silver lighter. He was so nonchalant. I pressed my lips together and fought back. That depends on what Mr. Thorne is willing to give. Click. I saw the man across from me close his lighter. His gaze fell on me, his expression gradually becoming serious. His body also slowly straightened. If you are willing, what I want to give you most is the position of Mrs. Thorne. I froze, my fingertips a little numb. Nathan, you should have seen the press conference. After a long time, I spoke, my voice weary. I crossed my hands and rested my chin on them. After a pause, I continued, at the moment, I have no courage to accept another relationship. I was being direct, but my refusal did not make him look displeased. On the contrary, he nodded in full agreement. I understand. Even though the trash has been dealt with, the feeling of disgust is still there. This analogy, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but Audrey, if you ever want to date again, can you consider me first? Give me a chance to pursue you. He held up a single, pleading finger and then touched his own cheek. For the sake of the fact that I'm quite handsome, I was silent. I looked at this face, which was more handsome than 10 male models, and had to admit that I was a little tempted. His way of pursuing people was very special. Why are you wearing the same clothes as the day before yesterday? Anyone who didn't know better would think my company is not doing well. I'm giving you a day off to go shopping, and then, a 7-figure transfer. A sudden business trip. Turkey. The private jet is already arranged. We might take a detour to Tokyo or Paris. It's okay. We can buy everything there. Don't be nervous. It's just a regular business dinner. It's just in the name of my cousin's wedding. That one over there, who's laughing like a fool, is my dad. The one who's constantly smacking him on the head is my mom. My parents both know you're my assistant. They won't ask you a single question. Though they think you're very capable, and that you're a flower and I'm a pile of cow dung. I sat at the main table, trying to make myself as small as possible, falling for him. It wasn't hard. His love was very direct. He didn't, because of my independence, assume I didn't need to be relied on, nor did he, because of my maturity, think I didn't need romance. He was seriously pursuing me as a woman, even if his methods were sometimes a little childish and clumsy. He had heard that girls like a domineering CEO, a man who would spend a fortune. He thought girls liked the romance of Turkey, Paris. He was using a business trip as an excuse. He didn't know from where that I had had a birthday when I was 18, so on my 30th birthday, he had personally made me a cake, but had the whole company eat longevity buns. The cake is all yours. The buns are for everyone to share. I can give you any kind of cake. We're not going to be stingy and share a bun. And every morning, in the vase on my desk, there would be a single tulip. Nathan, how did you know I liked tulips? I couldn't help but ask. I liked tulips, but I had never told anyone. Even he didn't know. Of course, he had never given me flowers. I guessed. He answered with such righteousness. So proud. I saw that the cover of your diary at the press conference was a tulip. I thought you would like it, so I bought one. The first day you saw the flower in the vase, you smiled so sweetly. He had I'm so smart look on his face. My heart was plucked. I looked at his open gaze and, pressing my lips together, asked, "You saw the press conference. You should have seen her reading my diary, the contents of it. Even if I didn't think it was sordid, it was still hard to talk about, especially after being made a public joke." I stared at him, not wanting to miss a single micro-expression, and he did frown. When I was listening, I was very unhappy. My heart also sank a little. My fingers curled. Just as I was about to turn and leave, I saw him grinding his teeth. How come a good thing like being secretly in love with you didn't happen to me? I was so envious and jealous I almost bit my gums off. Pfft. I couldn't help but laugh at his dramatic display. Suddenly, I leaned over and pressed him against the table. In that moment, I saw his face visibly turn red. That look, it was a little cute. My smile deepened. I propped myself up and, cornering him, said, with a breezy tone, "A good thing like a secret crush, you may not have encountered it, but a thing like a relationship, if it falls into your lap, are you going to take it?" Liam's story. The thing he regretted most was that when she had come to him, he had softened. He was born into a wealthy family, he had always been pampered, but everything had changed in his 15th year. His father's company had gone bankrupt, and unable to take the blow, he had committed suicide. He and his mother were kicked out of their villa and into a 40-square-meter basement. His mother, who had never had to work a day in her life, was forced to take on odd jobs to support him. In less than a year, she had died of an illness. The ridiculous thing was that the medical expenses, they were only $20,000, just $20,000, and he couldn't afford it. From that moment on, he had been filled with a burning desire to make money, to go back to his old life. For this goal, he had learned to be obsequious. In college, he had heard that a nouveau riche was interested in investing in his start-up project, so he had done everything he could to get close to him. He had finally gotten a chance. Her younger daughter's birthday party, he had scrimped and saved for 3 months, had maxed out his credit card, and had finally managed to buy a decent gift. At the party, he was dressed to the nines, but standing in the crowd, looking at the dazzling little princess under the crystal chandelier, he felt a bitter taste in his mouth. After all, before he was 15, he was also like this, and what's more, he saw that the gift he had worked so hard to prepare was just casually tossed into a pile of other gifts, completely inconspicuous, and his position, he wasn't even qualified to get a piece of the cake, so he had left the party early, and just as he was feeling so dejected he couldn't express it, he had seen a girl, crouching by a stone bench, her hands clasped together, praying piously, to a white bun with a candle stuck in it. For some reason, he felt that they were kindred spirits. On a whim, he had walked up to her and had teased her. Later, he had found out her name was Audrey, and she was actually the eldest daughter of the family. She was just not favored, a transparent person in her own home. She and her were completely different. She was bright, proud, radiant, just like the him of the past, and she was silent, reserved, humble, just like the him of the present. So, he understood her, but he craved her kind of existence, and even after graduating from college, he had once gathered the courage to express his hope of further developing a relationship with her to her father. He had thought that his support for his project was a sign of his favor, but all he had gotten was her father's merciless ridicule. He had said that he was a toad trying to eat a swan's flesh, that he was barely good enough for his eldest daughter, his younger daughter. He was dreaming. That sentence, it had been a thorn in his side for a long time, so much so that later, when he was with her, he still held a grudge. He knew she was good, and he knew that their journey had not been easy. Every night he couldn't sleep. He was grateful to have her by his side. When he was on a business trip to country, to close a deal that was crucial for the company, he had prepared a diamond ring. He had thought that when he came back, he would propose to her, but he had not expected to see her. Even though her family had gone bankrupt, she was still so radiant. They were like old friends, catching up. In their conversation, he could see that she was well protected, still that same otherworldly person, but he had not expected that an accident would happen, that to help him close the deal, she would be kidnapped and violated by those people. Even though she had said afterward that she didn't mind, had urged him to go back to his home country, his heart was still not at ease. And later, she had returned, she had come to him, had said she was pregnant, that she couldn't have an abortion, and had asked him to give her child a title, otherwise, she would not be able to live. Seeing her crying so hard, he had softened. He knew this was wrong to her, but he had still taken the diamond ring he had prepared for her and had put it on her finger, and had gotten a marriage license with her. Posting on social media was her request. She said she hoped the child could be born openly. She had said it was just for a year. A year later, when the child was born, they could get a divorce. She would give him back his freedom. He knew this was very unfair to her, but he had still been lucky. When he had asked her, he had begged her to accept, to wait for him for a year. He was relieved that she seemed to have agreed, but he could feel her distance. He was scared, so he had thought of a way to compensate her. He had transferred 15% of the company's shares to her, even though that 15% was what she deserved for her investment, but he still felt that if she took the shares, she would be accepting his proposal. But what had happened later? It was all beyond his expectations. He had not expected that at the press conference, his best friend would backstab him and release their conversation, and that she was also calculating. In one night, he had lost everything. He was even kicked out of the board. The company was gone. His wife was gone. Everything was gone. He had gone to his friend to confront him, but all he had gotten was a hard punch. His friend had said that he was serving justice, that he was helping him expose him, and he deserved it. It was karma. Karma. He had laughed. He had gone back to the villa and had started to drink, had lived a life of debauchery for a whole year, until one day, he saw the calendar. He realized that today was the day he and she had agreed on. A year later, on a whim, he had dialed the number he knew by heart but had never dared to call. A short busy signal, and then the call connected. The moment it connected, his breath had hitched. Holding his breath, he had heard the voice he had been dreaming of, as if in a dream, as if everything could start over. "Audrey, the year is up. Can we get back together?" he asked, his hand holding the phone, his palm sweating, his voice trembling with an unconcealed tremor. The few seconds of waiting, they felt like a century to him. His heart was in his throat, but after a century, he heard a sneer, and then, his beloved girl's clear, bell-like laugh. "My child isn't illegitimate. We don't need a cheap substitute for a father." In an instant, his heart, it felt as if it had been brutally slashed. A bloody mess. His world, it completely collapsed. After hanging up, I cradled my swollen belly, though it was only 4 months, because I was carrying twins. It was exceptionally large. He was curled up beside me, like a police dog, staring at me intently. His mind was not on the news on the LCD TV, but he was squinting his eyes, a wary look on his face. "Who was that? His ears are so sharp." I playfully pinched his ear and then pointed at my stomach, a playful smile on my face. "Someone who likes to be a cheap father. Who else could it be?" At this, he sneered and then took out our marriage certificate, his hands on his hips, his nose in the air. "My daughter and son don't need a father." He's so proud. 3 months ago, he and I had gotten our marriage license. We had not expected to find out I was a month pregnant at the premarital check. It's hard to imagine that he, the president of a publicly traded company, had cried and laughed at the Civil Affairs Bureau, had told everyone he was going to be a father, like a fool, and especially recently, when he had found out he was the father of twins. He had been so proud he was like a preening peacock. He had even, insanely, had my ultrasound report printed into a poster and had hung it in the center of his family's living room. This act, it had made him the public enemy of the entire family, so childish it gave me a headache. I couldn't help but laugh. I pulled him down to sit, and then, suddenly, I squinted my eyes and looked at him, asking in a sinister tone, "A while back, I ran into an old friend, who," he blurted out, but his eyes were darting around. I raised an eyebrow and turned his chin to face me, my smile even more innocent. "His best friend, you don't know him, but he knows you. He told me, a year ago, someone had asked him for a favor. Helping people is a good thing," he answered with such righteousness. "Is that so? But I heard that this favor was asked when he had just gotten his marriage license. How do I feel that?" Someone had a premeditated plan, a bad intention, the recording evidence, it had certainly helped me, but the timing. It was hard for me not to suspect that he had had a premeditated plan. Alright. He seemed to be unable to pretend anymore. He threw in the towel and took my hand, his face a picture of frankness. The day I heard he had gotten his license, I was so happy I couldn't sleep all night. The first time I saw you at the bidding, standing behind that bastard, I was thinking, how could that dog be so lucky to have found such a fairy? With a small laugh, I leaned over and kissed him on the lips, my breath like an orchid. And now, the fairy has come to your house. At the same time, a news report, through the tireless efforts of the police, a human trafficking organization in Myanmar has been dismantled. Dozens of rescued girls have returned to the country. One of them, a Miss Miller, was the most seriously injured and has already been contacted by her family.